let's talk about something important. A lot of social media, news, etc., is telling us about Syrian refugees and how it should be handled. We have some people saying that we shouldn't help them, that we have other issues to handle and things like that. Yes, they are right. We do have issues here about homeless veterans and things like that, huge issues. But I have a question for those people. How many of you have actually helped a homeless veteran before this week? How many of you have bought a meal for someone who is homeless, got down on their level, talked to them, hugged them, treated them like a human being before this even came up this week? How many of you have actually cared about these people before it worked with your political agenda? Some of you might. Some of you might actually live to your word and volunteer at soup kitchens or even buy a meal for someone who's homeless and treat them like humans. But my guess is the majority of you haven't even given them a second thought since it became an item of debate with the Syrian refugees. I'm hearing people complain that these people might bring in ISIS. They might hurt us. They might harm us. I totally understand that fear too. But I've seen a recent post from an immigration lawyer in Ohio named Scott Hicks that he explains the process of immigration quite clearly, that it's not just jumping on a plane and deciding I'm going to go to the United States. He states, before being allowed to come to the United States, each refugee must undergo an extensive interviewing, screening, and security clearance process conducted by regional refugee coordinators and overseas resettlement support centers, or RSCs. That doesn't sound like jumping on a plane. If you want, I'll send a link to this whole explanation he has on the process. It comes out to almost 2 pages printed. Let's get down to the chase, okay? Not letting in Syrian refugees has nothing to do with the Syrian refugees. We've seen this problem before in our history in the 30s and 40s. It's because our country has this very bad, almost cancerous thing going on in our culture that might have even extended into other parts of the world. And it started on 9/11. Our country has a huge case of Islamophobia. We are afraid of those who are Muslim. We are afraid of those who aren't Christians or anything like that. And that is evident in how people are reacting, how we should only let Christian refugees in, just like those who aren't Christians somehow aren't human. How we should start requiring special identification according to Mr. Trump. This is absolutely ridiculous, and this is repeating history. According to the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum, this is all that happened in the 30s in Nazi Germany. Around the time of 1937, 1938, all Jews, all of those who were of Jewish ancestral descent, not even practicing Jews, but just because their parents were Jewish, were required to carry identification stating their religion. If their first name wasn't of Jewish origin, they had to add Israel or Sarah, depending on their gender, to their name. They were stopped from going to public schools and universities and all these things. They were attacked from the government, from their fellow citizens because of fear. The fact that the idea of giving special identification to people who are Muslim, the fact that someone could even bring such an outrageous idea up, and the fact that people are still okay with it is terrifying. It's absolutely terrifying. This happened starting in 1920 when there was a publicly declared intention to segregate Jews from the Aryan society. It took them 17 years from that moment to starting to require them to hold identification. Islamophobia started in our nation around 2001. That was 14 years ago. I'm terrified and ashamed of our country. I'm afraid that we're going to this dark realm, that we're going to start persecuting people again for their religion or their beliefs. That I'm terrified that even posting this video could mark me as a political enemy because I'm calling it out. But the problem is, if we're afraid to call it out when it's not us, no one's going to call it out when it is. We have a problem here. The fact that someone running for political office could outwardly say that they want to ID people of a certain religion is a problem. The fact that they're not getting outraged to the point that they're dropping out of the Republican race is a problem. The fact that so many people are trying to use homeless vets and things like that as a reason to not help those who are in need is a problem, because most of those people haven't helped those homeless vets. If they cried the same outrage any other day of the year, any other time, we wouldn't have a problem of homeless vets, because our elected officials wouldn't be able to ignore it anymore. So the problem isn't the homeless vets. The problem isn't our own homeless, which, yes, is a problem, but that's not the issue here. The issue here is people don't seem to care about them unless they can use them as a way to prevent something from happening that they don't agree with because of a fear. But let me tell you something. Living in fear of a group of people is exactly what the terrorists want you to do. They want you to fear them. They want you to be afraid of them. They want you to sit there and be afraid of anyone who might be wearing a hijab or who might be worshiping at a mosque. They want you to fear them. And then by fearing them, you're letting ISIS, you're letting the terrorists, you're letting them all win. By fearing the refugees, by fearing your neighbors who are Muslim, by saying we shouldn't be building mosques and shouldn't be allowing them, that they shouldn't have protections because of fear, is letting the terrorists win. It's letting ISIS, it's letting Al-Qaeda, the Taliban, it's letting all of them win. And I thought we were all better than that as Americans. I thought that we rose above and helped those in need. Isn't that the whole point of our Statue of Liberty? Those who are pointing to the attacks in Paris need to do a little bit of research. Those who attacked in Paris weren't refugees. They were nationals, European nationals. It's just not right what we're doing. We need to be willing to help those in need, especially if you are claiming you're Christian. John chapter 3, verse 17 states, "But if anyone has the world's goods and sees his brother in need, yet closes his heart against him, how does God's love abide him?" If you're not willing to help those who are in need, whether they are here or abroad, how are you living the word of God? How are you being strong? How are you living by his commandment of do not be afraid, which is stated so many times in the Bible? And if you're not Christian, which is fine, why are you going to let the terrorists win? Why are you going to let them win? Because by living in fear of a group of people is letting them win. That's giving them exactly what they want. They want you to live in fear. That's why they're terrorists. And to Mr. Trump, our country is better than Nazi Germany. And the fact that you would ask Muslims to hold special identification is appalling. And I can't believe you're in the running to rule this country.